Now, researchers have claimed that the oil giant ExxonMobil accurately forecast how burning fossil fuels would cause the planet to warm.
ExxonMobil is one of the world's largest and most powerful oil and gas corporations.
ExxonMobil.
From its controversial birth amid the chaotic early oil market, ExxonMobil has risen to become a global behemoth thanks to the audacious ambition of John D. Rockefeller in the late 19th century. Its triumphs and scandals shaped the world's reliance on fossil fuels, and its powerful presence on the market today is still fueling heated debates on our future as a planet. Born in Richford, New York in 1839, John Davison Rockefeller experienced a mix of stability and instability. His mother Eliza was a devout Baptist and instilled in him a strong sense of discipline and piety. His father, William, was a traveling salesman. He was often absent, leaving young John to shoulder much responsibility within the family. Amid this unique upbringing, the seeds of Rockefeller's future business empire were quietly sown. The young Rockefeller possessed a sharp mind and a natural aptitude for numbers. He displayed a remarkable talent for bartering and negotiation from a young age. Accounts tell of him raising and selling turkeys, working odd jobs for neighbors, and even cautiously loaning out small sums of his hard-earned savings at interest. Rockefeller was meticulously organized. He kept detailed ledgers of his transactions, a practice that would come to define his future business dealings. As Rockefeller entered his teenage years, his family located to Cleveland, Ohio. It was here that the burgeoning Industrial Revolution provided the backdrop for his true entry into the business world. At 16, he secured his first real job as an assistant bookkeeper with Hewitt & Tuttle, a commission merchant firm. Then, news of a remarkable discovery back in Pennsylvania began to filter through the bustling city of Cleveland. In 1859, Colonel Edwin Drake struck black gold in Titusville. This discovery marked the birth of the modern petroleum industry. The potential of this raw, flammable liquid was immense. Initially, it was primarily used for lamp oil to replace costly whale oil, but the possibilities seemed unbounded. Rockefeller immediately recognized the opportunity simmering within this chaotic and burgeoning market. The early oil industry was a whirlwind of speculation and risk. Boomtowns erupted and vanished nearly overnight, and fortunes were made and lost in a heartbeat. Refineries turned out kerosene of wildly varying qualities, and the transportation of this volatile substance was fraught with danger. The entire oil market was a chaotic gamble, prone to wild price fluctuations. Yet, it was within this very chaos that Rockefeller saw order. He understood that the true path to riches lay not in the unpredictable lottery of drilling for oil, but in controlling its refinement and distribution. Where others saw risk, Rockefeller saw potential. Where others saw volatility, he saw an industry ripe for consolidation and control. John D. Rockefeller's foray into the oil industry didn't involve drilling rigs and gushing wells. Instead, his weapon of choice was strategic calculation. In 1863, he partnered with Maurice B. Clark and Samuel Andrews to form an oil refining venture in Cleveland. It was through this collaboration with Andrews, a chemist with experience in refining techniques, that Rockefeller gained vital technical knowledge of the industry. Andrews' refining expertise was an asset, but it was Rockefeller's relentless drive for efficiency that truly set their venture apart. He negotiated fiercely for the lowest rates on raw materials, minimized waste products, and even repurposed byproducts, which he sold for additional revenue. Cost-cutting became an obsession, and efficiency became a religion. However, Rockefeller's ambition didn't stop at optimizing the refining process. With ruthless precision, he turned his sights to transportation, the very arteries of the oil industry. At the time, transporting oil relied primarily on railroads. These rail companies held immense sway over refiners, often dictating exorbitant rates. Rockefeller was not one to be at the mercy of others. He employed a shrewd mix of tactics to turn the tables on the railroad barons. At times, he played competing rail lines against each other to extract favorable bulk shipping rates through the promise of high volume. On other occasions, he would threaten to completely shift his business to a rival company. This pressured railroads to meet his demands. But when charm or veiled threats failed, he resorted to outright acquisition. He purchased his own barrel-making plants and built up a dedicated fleet of tank cars. All of this gradually weaned his company off reliance on the railroads. This relentless focus on efficiency and control had a transformative effect. Rockefeller's refining business outperformed its rivals. Ultimately, it produced higher quality kerosene at a significantly lower cost. This was not simply a matter of good business sense. It was a weapon. Rockefeller began systematically targeting competing refineries in Cleveland, offering struggling rivals a stark choice: sell their refinery to him at his price or be ruthlessly undercut until they faced bankruptcy. One by one, Cleveland's refineries fell into his hands. With each acquisition, his power grew. By 1870, a new player had emerged in the oil industry. Rockefeller, Andrews, and Flagler incorporated the Standard Oil Company, and it was poised to become a force unlike any the business world had ever seen. Rockefeller's ambition wasn't confined by city borders. His sights were set on dominating the entire American oil industry. To achieve that, he would devise a new plan, almost invisible weapon of corporate control: the trust. In 1882, under his guidance, a web of lawyers and financiers assembled the Standard Oil Trust. This groundbreaking structure allowed Rockefeller and a small group of his associates to maintain centralized control over the vast and growing network of the companies they had acquired. His refineries, pipelines, and transportation fleets now spanned across numerous states. Shareholders in these individual companies turned over their stock to the Board of Trustees, led by Rockefeller, in exchange for trust certificates. This move masked the true scale of Standard Oil's dominance. On paper, it appeared as a loose collaboration of companies, but in reality, it was a meticulously coordinated behemoth. The power was centralized and the profits pooled. Competitor companies didn't stand a chance. Through this brilliant legal maneuver, Rockefeller had sidestepped state laws designed to limit corporate expansion. He had effectively created the nation's first near monopoly. With the trust structure firmly in place, the real ruthlessness of Standard Oil's expansion was unleashed. Rockefeller's agents swarmed across the oil-rich regions of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and beyond. Their tactics were simple and brutally effective: acquire or destroy. Refineries that were seen as potential rivals were given the familiar choice: join the Standard Oil fold or be driven into the ground. Standard Oil's tactics triggered a groundswell of public fury. Small businesses were being systematically crushed, and consumers were at the mercy of an all-powerful entity that controlled the price of a commodity fundamental to everyday life. Newspaper cartoonists ruthlessly lampooned Rockefeller as a monstrous octopus with tentacles strangling the American economy. The name Standard Oil became synonymous with corporate greed and unchecked power. Politicians felt the rising tide of public anger and began to take notice. Investigative committees were launched. Calls for regulation grew louder. State legislatures in Ohio and New York launched legal battles against Standard Oil, but its cunning trust structure often stymied attempts to pierce the veil of its corporate form. In the halls of Congress, a groundbreaking piece of antitrust legislation was being drafted, one that would have a profound impact on Rockefeller's empire. It was the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. Chapter 4: Antitrust and a New Era. In 1890, the Sherman Antitrust Act was signed into law. This gave the federal government a powerful tool to dismantle trusts and combat anti-competitive practices. The law was a direct response to the dominance of companies like Standard Oil. Rockefeller initially dismissed the Sherman Act as a political maneuver, toothless and unenforceable. However, in 1906, President Theodore Roosevelt's administration began an aggressive antitrust campaign. Standard Oil found itself squarely in the crosshairs. A protracted legal battle ensued and culminated in a landmark Supreme Court decision in 1911. The court found Standard Oil in clear violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act and ordered its dissolution into 34 separate companies. The breakup of Standard Oil was a seismic event that reverberated through the American business world. The era of unfettered monopolies was over. Despite being forced to relinquish direct control, Rockefeller retained significant shareholdings in the successor companies. In a twist of fate, this forced splintering would actually make him even wealthier, as the values of these smaller, more nimble companies soared in the years that followed. Among the companies born from the remnants of Standard Oil were several that would go on to become major players in the global petroleum industry. Two of these, Standard Oil of New Jersey and Standard Oil of New York, played particularly significant roles. Standard Oil of New Jersey evolved over the decades, changing its name multiple times until ultimately becoming the modern-day Exxon. Foreign markets became increasingly crucial as the global appetite for oil grew. The Middle East, with its vast oil reserves, became a hotbed of activity for ex-Standard Oil companies. Over a few years, they secured exploration rights and built infrastructure in politically volatile regions, all in the pursuit of the black gold that now fueled the modern world. This international expansion didn't come without its own set of challenges and controversies, though. Foreign governments were wary of the immense power that these corporations held, and often struck hard bargains. Moreover, operating in regions with differing political regimes and labor standards raised difficult ethical questions for the companies, some of which continue to be debated today. Chapter 5: The Rise of ExxonMobil. While the dissolution of the Standard Oil monolith led to a proliferation of competing companies, the decades that followed saw a trend towards reconsolidation within the industry. Standard Oil of New Jersey was one of the largest of Rockefeller's former companies and embarked on its own journey of transformation. Through a series of name changes, it was known for a time as Esso, but the company ultimately settled on the name we recognize today, Exxon. Exxon didn't merely inherit Standard Oil's legacy of aggressive expansion and global ambition, it took it to the next level. The company invested heavily in research and development and sought out new technologies for oil exploration and refining. They pioneered techniques for extracting oil in challenging environments, from offshore drilling rigs to the frigid Alaskan North Slope. This focus on innovation gave Exxon a competitive edge in accessing new sources of oil to meet the world's ever-growing demand. One region became particularly critical to Exxon's global dominance: the Middle East. With its vast oil fields, the Middle East proved to be a treasure trove, but navigating the complexities of securing drilling rights and operating in a region rife with political instability required considerable finesse. Exxon deftly employed its economic clout and negotiation skills, working in collaboration with other former Standard Oil companies until it ultimately gained a strong foothold in the heart of global oil production. Yet, no company, no matter how large or powerful, is immune to disaster. In 1989, the Exxon Valdez oil tanker ran aground in Alaska's Prince William Sound, causing one of the worst environmental catastrophes in U.S. history. The images of oil-soaked wildlife and devastated coastlines became seared into the public consciousness. The spill was a public relations nightmare for Exxon. The disaster sparked widespread condemnation, and accusations of prioritizing profits over environmental safety swirled. The Exxon Valdez oil spill was a major turning point for the company, which was forced to confront the significant environmental risks of its operations and invest in improved safety measures. The accident also fueled a broader conversation about the responsibilities of oil companies toward the environment and the need for stricter regulations. In the 1990s, changing tides in the global oil industry led to a transformative event. In 1999, Exxon and another oil giant, Mobil, merged to form ExxonMobil Corporation. This mega merger created one of the largest publicly traded companies in the world. It also solidified Exxon's position as a global energy superpower. It was a move that, ironically, echoed Rockefeller's original consolidation strategy a century prior. However, this time, it didn't break antitrust laws. It was seen as a necessary step to compete in an increasingly globalized energy marketplace. In the 21st century, ExxonMobil remains a colossal force in the energy industry. Its current market capitalization hovers around $500 billion, and its annual revenue often exceeds that of many small nations. The company's reach is still truly global. Exploration, production, and refining operations span continents. However, the 21st century also presents unique challenges. Mounting concerns about climate change and the need to transition to a low-carbon future have put pressure on oil giants like ExxonMobil, which started facing investor demands and potential government regulations. So, the company has cautiously begun to diversify its portfolio, increasing investment in renewable energy sources like biofuels and carbon capture technology. Still, ExxonMobil remains heavily invested in fossil fuels, and the company continues to wield extensive political influence. It actively lobbies to shape energy policy in its favor and often funds think tanks and politicians that cast doubt on the science of climate change or oppose stricter environmental regulations. The looming question for ExxonMobil is how it will navigate the global shift away from fossil fuels. Can a company built on a legacy of oil adapt fast enough to thrive in a world increasingly fueled by renewable energy? Will it continue to prioritize short-term profits over long-term sustainability? Could it potentially repeat past patterns of environmental disregard? These questions not only determine the company's future, but could have significant ripple effects on the pace of global efforts to address the urgent issue of climate change.